Welcome to the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast, where we learn from real estate professionals across the industry. They will share about how they got into real estate, the big wins they have celebrated, the mistakes they have made along the way, and the advice they have for anyone following in their footsteps. Money really does grow on trees. Hey everybody, William Holland here on another episode of the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast. I've got Dan Calonge here today, and I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. So I am Dan Calonge. I've been in real estate now for the last couple of years, but my background is really pretty diverse. My family is originally from Cuba, and they came from Cuba to the U.S. in the 1960s, and I was the first one born in my family in the U.S. and really spent, the rest of my time, growing up in the U.S. I lived in Latin America for a while too, so I am fluent in Spanish and English, and I'm pretty good at Portuguese too. So I've got
Awesome.
that on me. But really, went to college for engineering, and did that for a little while. Got an MBA. Was in really most of my career, 28 years now, has been in high tech. So working for a number of Fortune 50 companies. And over the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of real estate investing. So that's, 30-second snapshot of what I've been up to.
That's awesome. So we're in Latin America. Where are you at for a little bit?
Yeah, so I lived in Venezuela and Colombia for a little while. And when I worked in Latin America for a while, and my biggest customers were all in Brazil. So I'd spent a lot of time in Brazil as well, which is why I ended up learning some Portuguese for that. So yeah, it's great. I really enjoy getting to see other cultures, and it's Latin America for me. As I visit these different places, it just makes me appreciate so much more where I live and what I have here in this country. It's one of those things that just hits you in the face when you go to some places that are definitely not as lucky as we are. So it's but yeah, I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I got to go to Kenya, to a remote village several years ago for mission work, and I can say the same things. It humbled me in a lot of ways, and it made me very much appreciate just the lifestyle that I
Yeah.
have and the things that I have here in America. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and the fact that we can do stuff like investing and all that is just for many people around the world isn't even an option. So it's great.
Yes, sir. That's cool. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it was like growing up as a first generation American and, your parents being immigrants. I'm sure that was interesting and tough at times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for my parents, it was pretty difficult. I mean, they fled Cuba when Fidel Castro took over. My grandparents kind of saw the writing on the wall. They knew things weren't going in a good direction. And they actually, I remember them saying they only thought they'd be gone for maybe 6 months or a year. But as it turned out, Fidel just kept, he stayed in power for a long time.
Hmm.
Things ended up, pretty poor. And so, I'm really thankful that my family made the decision to come to this country, just because I just wouldn't have, I mean, if I grew up in Cuba, it would be a whole different ball game here. I wouldn't have any anywhere near the experiences that I've had, and even to this day, Cuba is really been struggling. So, they left with very little. They came here and started. My grandfather was an attorney in Cuba, and when he got here, he started waiting tables and started to make some money to kind of feed the family, and just went from there. And my dad. He was 9 years old when he got to the U.S., so he did end up going to college and did fairly well in his insurance career. He's doing insurance, so that's but that whole story about coming from a place that wasn't necessarily where you're from now and trying to adjust and make it because there was no other option is something that has always been close to my heart because now today I do a lot of my volunteer work I do with immigrants and folks that they get to this country and have no idea what's going on or what to do, and that's actually where I focus a lot of my investing as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. I noticed the other day that you got an award, and definitely want to shine the spotlight on you for that. I don't think that you're doing these things, showing kindness and just pouring into the immigrant community to get awards. But
Yeah.
that work does deserve recognition, So tell us about that. You got the Latino Leadership Award, so that's a big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not something that, I'm not looking for awards or anything, but there's I live pretty close to Cincinnati, Ohio, and the largest social services agency in Cincinnati that serves the immigrant community uh, gave me this award for the work that I've been doing with the community since um, I started living in that area some years ago, and it was just nice. It was a nice gesture of theirs, and I had my family there, and it was really a great experience, and hopefully, my hope was that I could motivate some other professionals that were in the audience to decide to do something. Whether it's serving immigrants or serving the poor or serving people with disabilities, whatever lights you up, to give back because it really does mean a lot to a lot of people.
Definitely, yeah. It means a lot, and it's also life changing. Something that I want to focus on. And I've said it a few times, maybe not on these episodes, but I want to change the world.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that just by myself. I want to do that with other people, and I think that the way that you change the world is you change one life at a time, and
Hmm.
I think that you're able to do that, and I think that real estate as a whole is a nice platform to springboard into to changing the world.
Yeah, that's so spot on what you just said because it is, yeah, and it means a lot more too when you're able to see the person that you're helping and to see them grow through some kind of growth and see them in a better place. It really means a lot to me. That personal connection I have means a lot more than if I just wrote a check to some agency and said, okay, I did my giving. There it is. To me, it's a lot more fulfilling. And the fact that you went to Kenya and did that work, I mean, I'm sure that must have been amazing. So I'm sure you saw a lot of that too.
Nice, yeah, yeah, definitely. It was pretty cool. Um, I'm
That's
thankful
great.
to have gotten to go. So, we talked about real estate. We talked about you studying engineering, I believe,
Yeah,
and at Miami, Ohio University,
that's right.
not Miami, Florida. So I guess something that I have a question about. So, we both have an engineering background. I think that, we're taught to be very risk averse. And so, how did you come from that background and start investing in real estate? I know a lot of us decide that we're gonna just invest in mutual funds and try to really not be involved in any risk. And I think that we're losing out on a lot of upside, potentially.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, for me, the engineering, I mean, I don't regret at all having gone the way that I did because I think, in my opinion, the engineering education is a great foundation for almost anything. Because
I
you
agree.
really can, you can analyze things, you can think through problems, you can solve issues in a logical way, so that those kinds of skills are fantastic. And I think they really translate well into real estate, because you do have to look at situations and make the best decision on what you're looking at and whether or not you want to pursue it as an investment. And a lot of that has to do with numbers and stuff that some people are not very comfortable with. But as an engineer, it's something that you're not afraid of. And you mentioned the risk averse piece. Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of colleagues that are engineers as well that I talk to about that whole thing. And for me, the way I addressed it was that I purposely one, I educated myself. So I read books, listened to podcasts, tried to do as much on-demand content as I could. But the second thing that really took it over, that really helped, was finding other people that are doing this today that are successful, because they can actually tell you, well, here's what I see on this. Here's how this works, and the more you get exposed to people that have been successful in the industry, the more you realize, this is not risky. As a matter of fact, maybe it's riskier just leaving my money in the stock market. And it's not that I don't like, I tell people all the time, that investors that I talk to and all that, I'm like, look, I think that I don't think the stock market is bad by any means, but does your wealth need to be 100% there? Like, there might be an option. There might be, maybe there's some diversification that can happen to put into something that to me is a lot more. It has a projection. You meet projections. You hit your goals. With the stock market, there's, what are you going to do, right? You're at the whim of the market, and if you happen to retire in the wrong year, and you want to pull out your money, it could be 20% up or 20% down or whatever, So to me, the more I got exposed to this and saw how this real estate investing, especially the multifamily, for example, that really made a lot of sense to me.
Definitely, yeah. And just to be honest, like I had money invested in the stock market this year, and I saw double digit losses,
Yeah.
and that resulted in thousands of dollars of value, lost. And I sold at that point, not out of fear, but realizing like, hey, I don't want to be at the whim of the market. Like I want to invest my money, pretty much most of my money in real estate, and I can have diversity within real estate, in different markets, different teams, different asset classes. So that's kind of where I'm at in my personal journey right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, and I'm in the same boat. I've got 401k and all that is in stocks, and I've taken a big hit too, and it looks like everybody else, I guess. But I like to share the thought that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be, well, everybody else is going through it, so I will too. There are other options, and just because they're not as well known doesn't mean they're riskier. That's another kind of fallacy, I think, is that people assume that, well, if I haven't heard about it, then it must be kind of some black box or something mystical about it. When in reality, the more you learn about it, the more you see, no, this makes a lot of sense. This is very financially sound. So why not put some money in that and diversify my risk from what's going on with the stock market. So I couldn't agree more.
Passive investors in real estate are able to receive a check every month. Some people call that mailbox money. We say money really does grow on trees. Visit the website at biggerpictureholdings.com, where we have a ton of free resources to help you learn more about planting your very own money tree.
Definitely, yeah, and we kind of dove right in. I did want to touch on your company name and how you kind of
Yeah.
chose that as well.
Yeah. So Avanza is a Spanish word. It means to move forward, to advance. Avanzar is the verb. To me, I picked that name because I wanted to symbolize helping people move forward in their journey. And for me, particularly, the whole immigrant first generation investor is really the people that I really connect with the most, because I know that, my family didn't know much of anything when they got to this country, much less real estate investing or anything like that, right? So, so many first generation investors or immigrant investors that have never heard of this, and really, frankly, almost, and a lot of people haven't heard of it, even people who lived here their whole lives, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so I like to be able to talk about getting exposed to something new. And oh, by the way, this is, my investments are all in workforce housing. So
Okay.
C class, C plus kind of properties. And what you find in the areas that I invest in, like Texas, like Florida, like that there are a lot of immigrants that live in these properties. So
Right.
the idea for me to be able to not only get a return on an investment, but also be able to, usually there's some sort of renovation that occurs, improving the property somehow so it's a better place to live. And to think that you can do that while making a good return and just making it a better place to live for a family that doesn't know any better, I think is really pretty cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that so much. So why did you skip single family investing and jump straight into the multifamily realm?
Yeah, as I got started in my real estate investing journey, I started to look into what would be a great asset class to get into. And I looked at a bunch, but the first thing you always hear about is single family, right? And it makes a lot of sense. Most of us know we've bought a house more than likely, right? So we know a little bit about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can definitely do that and do okay. It's just for me, the more I learned about it, the more I learned about the magnitude of how you can really leverage your efforts and your time in a property that's much larger that could potentially earn you a better return, and with less work, because you can hire property managers that'll manage the property and do a good, and are professionals at their job, versus me, who would try to manage my one rental I have, or two rentals, or and then how do you scale that? It's just, so as I thought through that, I was like, that doesn't really sound to me like a very scalable solution for me. And so that's how I thought of it. And some people would say, oh, it's kind of risky to just jump from single family to multifamily. But I can tell you, having been doing this now for a little while, that it's not rocket science. If you're an engineer, you can definitely figure this out. But it's something that is you can learn, and it's very learnable, and having single family experience, quote unquote, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great commercial real estate investor. They're almost kind of apples and oranges in a way.
Yeah, that's so true. So I think that kind of rolls right into our last few questions. So I'd love to hear like a big win that you've had with investing in real estate, and then a big loss as well if you've got any of those. And we just want to try to look out for our investors
Yeah.
and educate them. And like you said earlier, like there's podcasts, there's books. You can go to meetups and conferences, and you can do this as an active investor, or you can do it as a passive investor. There's no excuses for why you can't do either one.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And even if it's somebody that's low on time, being a passive investor and relying on an expert, like you or like me, can really help, get their money into an asset class that can really make some good returns. But to answer your question about wins, probably one of the biggest wins I've had lately is we just closed on a property in Fort Worth, Texas, that we really, really liked. Being in Dallas, right? It's a very hot part of the country right now. No pun intended there. And there's just a lot of activity going on in that area. And we found what we thought was a really great property, and were able to make that successfully happen just recently. So that's been kind of my latest win. But if I think about a loss, probably the biggest thing that I can think of that isn't necessarily a loss per se, but it felt that way to me, was that one of my first investments that I had done in real estate as a passive investor, because that's how I started out in commercial real estate. One of my first investments didn't cash flow for the first year. I didn't get any payments at all, and I was kind of worried. I was like, "Wow, what's going on here?" And as I learned more about multifamily investing, if you're investing into value-added opportunities, typically it's going to take a while before the cash flow starts to come. But at the end of the day, you're going to see the returns. It's just that it might take you till towards the end of the whole period to start to really see them. So I initially kind of panicked at first. I was like, "What's going on here?" But as I've gotten more and more familiar with the industry and how these different deals work, that now makes a lot of sense to me now why there wouldn't be necessarily a lot of cash flow in the beginning. So, I'd say to any investor out there that's kind of wondering the same thing, talk to your general partner, talk to the person that, and just ask them, hey, what's going on? And more than likely it has something to do with a lot of the money being used for renovations and stuff like that until they can get the property to where it needs to be to stabilize. So.
Right, yeah. So I guess to add a little more color to that, so usually you are renovating the properties, you're pouring money into them, and part of what that takes to renovate an interior unit is to have that person move out.
Yep.
So when they move out, obviously that's a payment that you're not going to receive, and it takes time to do new paint or do new doors on the cabinets or new hardware or whatever that is. And so the big payday is going to be when you do add the value and you improve the value of the property, and then you refinance or sale. So if you are losing a little bit of money on that monthly payment, that's okay, because the big payment's coming. Like they're implementing the business plan, and that's what you want to see.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think passive investors just need to keep that in mind when they're looking at potential deals. If they're looking at one that looks really attractive, but it's a value add kind of deal, just to know in the back of their mind that it might be a little while before there's some big cash flow coming, but it eventually does come.
Yes, sir. Well, that's awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really appreciated having you as a guest.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And if you want to learn more about what I do or my investments, and feel free to visit my website. It's avanzainvest.com, AVANZA invest.com. And there you'll see a passive investing guide that I put together for immigrants and first generation investors on how to get involved in real estate.
That's awesome. Yes, sir. And we'll give you a shout out on LinkedIn as well, so you'll be able to follow him there if you'd like as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Like and subscribe below. A new episode will air every Tuesday at 7 a.m. Are you looking for more content? Visit our website, biggerpictureholdings.com. And remember, money really does grow on trees.